I invented this crazy plan to get a bicycle from Big W. Started from Brisbane and I started pedalling. So I just made the whole east coast of Australia home. 7 or 8 months before I actually pedalled all the way into Melbourne. And every town I went into, I was the spectacle of the town. We bought a $750 Commodore car. We set off to go do a lap of Australia. We did it quite easily. We went around Australia in about 150 days. I didn't want to see anything. I've already seen I wasn't interested in tourism. We just went for a drive. Really studying dog training at the time. In the pub, I was just looking at the TVs in that, and I thought, there's greyhound races. I like greyhounds. And just as I was leaving, something inside of me stopped me. Never gambled, ever. I got $5. I put in the machine, pressed it a couple of times, won $650 straight away.
Whoa.
And I thought, hang on, what's going on? Something's happening. I'm going to look in the paper for a dog, because that's what I want. First thing I look in there, Whippets, $650.
Welcome to the first ever episode of Doers Down Under. I'm here with Nick, who I met on the street last night in Wollongong. Wollongong? Shell Harbour? What's it?
Shell Harbour.
Shell Harbour. So I met Nick in Shell Harbour. I was just parked up, and we got chatting. And he told me he's been travelling. He travelled for 22 years from when he was 19 until you were
42.
42. So I'm going to be interviewing Nick today about all his travels, which he did around Australia, and just hear what you've done and where you've experienced. Real quick before this episode begins, this is me from 4 months later when I'm actually editing this podcast. It's like July 2023. Thank you very much for starting to watch this episode. I just want to let you know, Nick is a really interesting character. I really enjoyed interviewing him. Personally, I feel like I didn't ask enough questions. I let him keep talking too much. Being my first interview, wasn't really, used to interviewing people at all. I just want to learn from it, make the next episodes better and better. But yeah, hopefully in the next episodes I'll be better at actually interviewing, asking more questions. There's things he said I should have, asked for more clarification on. So I regret doing that, but oh well, you got to start somewhere. Just, it's a good starting point. Anyway, don't 100% agree with all the stuff that Nick said in this episode. Some of the things he said, I'm like, yeah, think to myself, whoa, that's, don't agree with that at all. I wouldn't have done that, and I don't think he should have done that himself. But anyway, it doesn't matter. It was still a really fun episode to enjoy. Lots of lessons to learn from his 22 years of travel. Anyway, hope you enjoy this. Leave a comment, something like that. I don't really know how any of this stuff works, but yeah, hope you enjoy, and let's get into the episode.
Well, it's always best to start at the beginning, is that I was born into Mormonism.
Yeah.
So I was raised in the Mormon cult and brainwashed from birth. So by the time I reached 19, I didn't understand the world. I had no idea what was going on in the world, and I had passions of travelling, seeing the country, going fishing, catching all the fish that I'd only ever seen in books. I had a friend who was into fishing, so we both bought a van. It wasn't a van, it was a 1976 Land Rover, and it was the most biggest piece of garbage car that you could imagine. It didn't work. It had so much play in the steering that you couldn't actually steer it down the road and go more than 80 kilometres an hour. But we didn't intend on moving quickly, and we were both on the dole, and in those days the dole was only a couple of $100 a fortnight. Mm-hmm. So we were living on nothing, and this car took all the petrol, and it was converted to gas, and at that stage gas was about 16 cents a litre. We left at the start of 1996, the two of us, and we thought we would fish all our way up right around Australia. Yeah. But once we got moving in the van and with the money and things, we thought we're never going to get around Australia in this. And so we decided to go much slower. We would spend 3 months at a time in different towns instead of just 3 days like the average traveller. We would stay and we would get to know everything and fish the same places over and over. And car was called the Iron Maiden. It was all tin. There was no, it was all aluminium. It didn't rust. And we had the biggest stereo system you could imagine put in there. So we would turn up into town with the stereo on, and we would had the Darth Vader or Star Wars tape. There were no CDs, so we had cassettes. So we would turn up into town, wind the windows down, put on the Imperial Death March, and play it as loud as we could while driving through the town. And people just thought we were insane. We had hair down to the bottom of our backs, both of us. We both loved heavy metal music, and fishing was what we did, and we got good at it. And so from 1996 we travelled for about 11 months before we got to Cooktown. A lot of the time the stops were so long because the car was just breaking down, and we were finding people who would fix the car, and we just managed. We ate 2-minute noodles, we ate baked beans, we lived as simple as we could, and we lived to our budget. And my friend was very good at teaching me, who had been spoiled rotten all my life. He was very good at teaching me how to make personal sacrifices and how to go without. And those were the things that enabled us to travel. If we had worried about things like McDonald's and KFC and all of these other things that the world now consumes, we would never have made it. So it was a really, really good trip. And when we got to Cooktown, we realised we can't go any further. It's even from Cairns to Cooktown in those days was 5 hours on a dirt road. Yeah. So once we got to Cooktown, the car was in such bad shape that we had the total care package for roadside assist. So we called them and told a whole bunch of lies, and they put us on buses and sent us all the way back to Melbourne. So we started in Melbourne and got to Cooktown, but at the end we got a bus home, and the car was towed to Brisbane. They wouldn't tow it to Melbourne, they towed it to Brisbane. And this was a car that should have been just scrapped. Yeah. But they towed it to Brisbane to my friend's cousin's place. So I went all the way home to Melbourne, but my friend went with his car, and he never left. He never came back from Brisbane. He was supposed to get the car in Brisbane and drive back to Melbourne, but instead he just got the car in Brisbane and stayed there. And he now he's an accountant with a house, and he basically everything that we learnt in those 11 months of travelling. At the end of it, he just went straight back to normal lifestyle and got a job, and once he had children, it's game over. And he's probably pushing 50 years old like me, and he didn't do any more travelling, where I found the travel bug. So after I got back to Melbourne, I was only there for a short amount of time before I started going on my own. And I used buses, I used walking, I lived in a tent, I would just go anywhere. But we were both musicians, so in my travels I started playing the guitar on the street, and realised, after quite a while, it took me to realise that I can do this. I can continue. I can play the guitar on the street and make enough money to survive and have a good lifestyle. And I kept going and never turned back. I tried to turn back a number of times, but found that it just wasn't in my heart to be part of the beast system and have a beast consciousness. I had a free mind, and I had a free lifestyle, and once I tasted that freedom, I was never going to give it up.
So that was your first trip
That was the first trip, and that led to really the rest of the trips. So I went up and down the East Coast over and over, because going anywhere outside of the East Coast, there were no major towns that I could busk and make money on the street, and also there were it gets more remote, it gets more expensive, longer travelling distances to fishing locations, and so I just made the whole East Coast of Australia home.
Right.
And I went up and down through Brisbane and fished all the rock fishing platforms, and the south coast of New South Wales was always my favourite. I got to meet a lot of backpackers, and I was, they were always by that stage younger than me, but only by a few years, and I was able to learn about them and their country, and whether they were from France or Germany or from the UK, and it gave me a real insight into the world and how the world works. And many Australians just believe that Australia is all you need to know about, but you don't. You need to know about the rest of the world, the rest of everybody else's culture, and how they grew up and what they were taught in school as opposed to what we were taught in school. I lived in a tent and just travelled and saw everything and tried to learn as much as I could. And I always had a love for animals, a love for dogs and cats, and it was about 2009 that I finally met a girl that I liked, and I thought I liked at the time.
How old were you at this age in 2009?
2009, I must have been about 37 or so. No, yeah, I was born in 1976.
Yep.
I can't work it out, I'm not that good.
That's all
but
good.
I liked her, and she liked me to a degree. We weren't really suited to each other, but we tried. And she worked in the hospitals as a dental assistant, doing school dental vans, and she would travel around in the dental vans and treat the kids. And through her work I was able to get work in the hospital, and I started as the gardener in country hospitals because she was doing dental vans in the country Queensland, and I worked in the hospitals and made my way up into wardsman. And she got a bit homesick, and she decided that she wanted to give up the Queensland country lifestyle, which only lasted for us about 2 years, and she moved back to Brisbane. And I didn't go immediately, but when I was able to locate work in Brisbane in the government hospitals, I got a job as a wardsman in the Princess Alexandra Hospital. And I loved the country hospital. It was so easygoing, and everybody warned me, you won't be the same if you move to the city. If you move to Brisbane and work in the hospital, and they were telling me outright, you won't enjoy it. I could see that I had this freedom mindset, and they said that you're going into the city, the rents you're going to pay. They're basically telling me straight out that you've got a little bit of freedom doing this job in the country, and when you take it to the city, you'll see the true meaning of, slavery by work.
Yeah.
And that, no matter how hard you work, the prices of city living will dictate your freedom. And they were right. And I lasted about a year in the hospital. By the time the two of us lived in the city, we grew apart, and I decided to do some more travelling. So that was this 3 years that I really had a break, and it wasn't even quite 3 years, but in that 3 years we got a dog, had a little Jack Russell mini dachshund cross, who I called Colin.
Yeah.
And he was my best friend. So when I left, the dog came with me, and I didn't have I always used, I used at the stage I was driving her dad's spare car, so I never really had a car. And this was at this moment of wanting to leave Brisbane. I didn't know where I was going to go or what I was going to do, but I knew I wasn't going to let the dog go, because the dog was my best friend, and she really didn't have a love for animals the way that I did, and she was happy to let the dog go. So I invented this crazy plan to get a bicycle from Big W for $99 and get a trailer on the back of the bike where I could put the dog and we could start going on the road together.
Yeah.
And the dog wasn't very happy about it at the start, but he got better and more used to it. So I had a little mini guitar that I would put in the trailer, and I carried I started with a lot of gear, and in the end I didn't need the gear. As you start travelling, you realise you don't need very much at all. So you know, it started from Brisbane, and I started pedalling, and I think it was about 7 or 8 months before I actually pedalled all the way into Melbourne.
Yeah.
And I saw my family, and been speaking to them and telling them that I'm doing a bike ride from Brisbane to Melbourne, and everybody thought I was crazy. And every town I went into, I was the spectacle of the town. Look at this guy with a bicycle and a dog in there, and he says he's riding from Brisbane to Melbourne. And I was quite embarrassed of it to begin with, because I was overweight, and I couldn't ride very well at the start, and I had all these built up feelings of that people were looking at me, and people were judging me, and people were looking down upon my bike ride. And people would come up to me and say, you call that a holiday?
Yeah.
That's what you think's a holiday? And I'm like,
so how did you overcome that fear, and that how did you overcome the sense of, oh, everyone's thinking badly about me, everyone is looking down upon me? How did you overcome that fear and take it, or did you never get past that?
It really didn't wear off until I got south of Sydney, and I could show people that I had actually ridden that far on this bicycle from Big W with this gear, and the people started to change around me, and they would say, have you really pedalled that all the way from Brisbane? And I say, yeah. And they go, that's crazy, but good on you. Well done. Like,
So,
I couldn't do that, but you're doing it. And the more that I began to let these feelings go inside of me, I started to gain confidence, and I became proud of my ride.
Right.
And then as I would speak more freely to people of what I was doing, because originally people would ask me what I was doing and I didn't want to tell them. But as I got further and further in distance, the confidence started to grow. And then I began telling them, and they changed. And I changed because of their reactions. So I began to feel proud of myself, and there were moments where I was on the side of the road crying. I didn't want to do this anymore. I'm sick of these hills. I'm sick of this sun. I'm sick of the wind. I'm sick of camping and being scared somebody's going to come along. And it was just all lifted. And it wasn't until that I finally pedalled into Melbourne, and I really showed my family what I'd done, but it wasn't the reaction that I expected to get. It was the same reaction that I got when I started. I started to feel that same thing, that my family were looking down upon me for doing this trip. Why aren't you working in the hospital? You could have stayed there. You could have made a life for yourself and made good money, and you could have had a car. You could have, worked towards a house and building a savings in the bank. And why my family were frustrated that I didn't choose the lifestyle that they chose. So this just was more fuel for me to continue doing, because I knew in my heart what I was doing was serving me. I wasn't serving the people, and I wasn't doing the things that people thought that I should be doing. And I started to believe that it's right to not care what they think of me, and it's better to go with what's in your heart. So I tried to, I saw my family, and that wasn't the reaction that I wanted. And so I thought, stuff this. I turn around and ride back.
Yeah.
So we started again, same bike, same everything. Started riding again. And I mean, I had so many flat tyres, I had so many problems on the first ride, but I didn't care. I thought, I'll do it again. I want that feeling back. So I started pedaling, but this time my heart wasn't in it the same way. My heart, had been broken. So I didn't have the enthusiasm that I had. I didn't have the drive. So I started drinking a lot. I'd always had a drink, but this time I started drinking to get drunk, and drinking because I was miserable, and drinking to drown the demons in my head. And that didn't turn out well. That's when you make these. Well, I found, when I made these decisions to go down that dark side of drinking and, being a terrible person, I wasn't the person that I was when I started. And when I got to Melbourne on the second ride, I drinking more and more and more, and I still had my little dog, but one day I was in Narooma and I was drinking and I wasn't watching the dog, and he wandered across a bridge right into the heavy traffic, and I didn't know where he was, so I'm looking for him. So I decided to give a whistle, and he comes running back straight into the traffic and gets hit by the car. Stop for a second. But it was a lesson that I needed to learn, and it was a tough lesson, but I didn't change. I got angry at the world, and I got angry at cars, and I got angry at everything. Blamed everybody but myself, where I was the one to blame. But I wouldn't take the responsibility. So I kept drinking it more and more, and these consequences kept coming. Because the world was trying to show me a way, and I refused to go that way. I wanted to go my way. I didn't want to go the way of truth and love and freedom and caring for myself. So I drank more and more. And one day I had a mini stroke. I woke up in the middle of the night in my tent and I couldn't move. I was paralysed. So I tried to get up, and I would just fall over, and I didn't know what was happening to me. And at that point I didn't even care what was happening to me. I fell into my bicycle and broke the spokes. I wrecked my foot. I couldn't even walk. So instead of going to the hospital, or instead of looking into my soul, I decided to keep drinking. The same day that I had a stroke, I went and bought more alcohol. Who does that? Only a sick mind does that. But I wasn't ready to face the truth. So I left the bike, I left everything, and I started hitchhiking. And I started living on the street, living on travelling by bus, travelling by train, all of these things. And I just wasn't finding any of the happiness that I found on the first ride, and eventually I decided I can't do this. I'm not happy. I'll go home. So I went back home, and again I wasn't welcome because my family want me to be, join and be a part of their religion and their lifestyle and their, what I call the slave mentality. They wanted me to have this slave mentality that working is good and paying tax is good. And so my dad bought me a car. He thought that would give me all the happiness that I needed and give me, but he didn't just buy me a car. There was a catch, is that I would be able to pay him for the car. Just whatever I could afford. But of course, he knew, and I knew, that the only way that I could ever pay anything for the car was to adapt the slave lifestyle. Go and get a job, go and pay tax, go and do what you're told. Arrive at work at 9 o'clock, make sure you're in bed by 10, get up at 7. I was never going to do it. It was not in my heart, it was not in my mind or soul. So, I then upset my dad because I had the car, but I wasn't going to pay. But my dad really didn't want the money. He wanted me to surrender the travelling. He didn't want the money, and he knew that was a way to trap me. Is if I had the car and I would pay him, then he owns me again.
Okay.
Where I'd broken away from my parents and their religion and everything, but he wanted me back. And that was a way that he was going to trap me into doing. So, of course, we had a fallout. There was keep the car, I don't want anything. The car wasn't worth much. And so I lived in the car for 7 years. And it was finally when I got the car that I was able to get another dog. I took the car and I started travels. Actually, I've just completely missed an entire section.
Okay.
Is after the bike ride, on the second bike ride and losing the dog, and I went back home, one of the guys that I had met and that I'd travelled with in the past, just as he's a backpacker, but he's Australian, and we bought a $750 Commodore car, the VN car, and he was on the pension and I was on the dole, and between the two of us we bought the car, and he always wanted to drive right round Australia. So we set off to go do a lap of Australia. I think it would have been around probably 2011, and he was a busker and I was a busker. We both played guitar and sang on the street, and that was how we did it. So we did it quite easily. We went around Australia in about 150 days. I didn't want to see anything. I've already seen I wasn't interested in tourism. We just went for a drive. So we just drove and drove and drove, and when we ran out of petrol, we'd play guitar, put more petrol in, drive and drive. We weren't looking for anything. And we would get into towns we went all through the outback, and we'd get to places like Broome, and people would come, and tourists who have flown into Broome. They've never seen Australia at all. They just arrive at Broome and they say things to you like, "Oh, have you seen the boab tree? Oh, it's in town. The boab tree, it's so beautiful." We've seen 50 million boab trees. We've driven past every single one of them and didn't even bother to stop. We used to drive along and go, "Look, there's another rock. Wow, how interesting. Look, there's another tree. Look, there's a bunch of birds. Who gives a... Look, another lake. Wow, big deal. Look, this is a big town. This has got a Bunnings. This has got Coles." We just didn't care. We didn't see anything that we wanted. We had no interest in it. All we were doing is just driving and driving for the sake of driving. So we finally did 150 days. We drove right around Australia, and from Darwin we drove down to
So where did you
Alice Springs.
where did you start this trip?
Started in Victoria.
Yep.
And drove up to Cairns, and then across to Darwin, down to Alice Springs, and then back up to almost to Darwin again, and then all through Western Australia around the coast. We didn't even bother to go and look at the beach. We just kept driving through Western Australia, and nothing there. Like nothing that we wanted.
What kept you driving? Why did you want to drive? What made you go, I don't want to see anything, I just want to keep driving? Why was that, do you think?
We had both travelled for so long that every single town was the same. Everything became the same. It was just that illusion of separation was destroyed. Everything that we thought was separate from each other. The towns are all separate from each other, and we realised, no, it's just the one thing. Everything is the one. Everything is the same. Every town has a Coles. Every town has a Woolworths. Every town has McDonald's. Every town has some stupid tourist thing with some steps and some paid car park and some national park where you have to pay to go, and every caravan park was the same. I didn't even know what town I was in. I didn't even care. It's like, am I in, which town? I mean, we'd even say to each other, what town was it where we did that? And you go, I don't know. And you go, I don't know either. Who cares? It's all the same.
Yeah.
So we'd look at brochures that would have a picture of a beautifully painted lighthouse. And we'd go to the lighthouse and we'd realise it's covered in rust and it's a dump. They just photoshopped the brochure to get people to go and have a look at it. It's all we just started seeing lies everywhere. Constantly, people just telling tourists lies so that they would get their money. And we just started getting really angry at the world on that trip, of that this world is just one big lie. And once we did the whole trip around, never really spoke to the guy again. I think after 150 days we were fed up of each other, and fed up of the world, and fed up of the prices. I mean, we'd go into a place like Fitzroy Creek and we'd say, how much is a 6-pack of beer? They go, $25. I go, what? $25? What do you mean they're $12 everywhere else? And he goes, yeah. I say, well, how much for a carton of beer? Oh, I'll have to find out. You work at the bottle shop. You don't even know how much a carton of beer is? What's your problem? You just said a 6-pack's $25, twice the price of anywhere else. He'd go and check, and he'd come back and he'd say, oh, a carton of beer is $50. So a carton of beer is the same price as 2 6-packs. You're an idiot. What's wrong with your whole business? Your whole business is just funded on lies? You're just a great big liar? And the answer is yes, absolutely.
How is he a liar? How is he a liar for charging?
He's making up his prices off the top of his head. It depends who comes in. If you're a local,
right.
If you're a local, a beer 6-pack is $12. If you're not a local, it's $25.
Yeah. Okay, that makes more sense to you, Clive.
Yeah, he's just a liar. That's how he runs and operates his business. So we thought, well, perhaps Coles and Woolworths, at least their prices are set. But no, they're not. They're all liars as well. So, you start getting down about the whole world again. You go through all the trauma of trying to understand why the world treats everybody like this, why they don't, show love to each other, why they don't care about each other, why their main reason for living is to rip people off. I mean, these people don't have a conscience at all. They don't they see everybody as their victim. Oh, look, here comes a victim. Let's get him for whatever he's got. That's how they think in these towns. So we just got fed up of it. So after that big trip with him, I started again, and that's when I got my own van. We sold the Commodore because of him. You know, it was $750 Commodore, but he wanted half of his money. He doesn't even drive a car. So I was like, I'm fed up of you as well. You're an idiot. I shouldn't have even gone around Australia with you because you're just a selfish, greedy, good for nothing.
So when you bought the Commodore in the first place for $750, did you pay 50-50? Did you pay whatever? Yeah. And then when you sold it, did he want?
When we sold it, he actually sold it himself, and he told me that because he was staying at a friend's place. He told his friend what he sold it for, but then he told me different.
Right.
So he actually shortchanged me on the car.
Right.
And it wasn't until they stopped being friends, him and the guy he was living with stopped being friends, that the other guy actually said, you know, he did rip you off when he sold that car.
Okay, so he may have sold it for $1,000, told you he sold it for $500.
Yep.
Or do you know the exact figures?
That's about right, exactly about right.
So then he told you, I sold it for $500 and only gave you $250, and then he went away with 3/4 of the price.
And I had just used my $500 Centrelink loan to put new tyres on the car. I was down all the money. He was up all the money. So he didn't learn anything when he went around Australia about these things. He adapted them to himself, where I didn't. I started to care less and less and less about money, and started to care less about life altogether. And that's when I got, my dad saw that and tried to help me with the car. So, I mean, it's not, my dad had good intentions, but he just didn't understand, what I knew and what I'd experienced, and there was no way he was going to listen to me, because he knows everything. So he thinks, where I actually think he knows less than nothing. He knows, he's just completely brainwashed. He's brainwashed by the system, he's brainwashed by religion, he's brainwashed by all of it. Where my mind was becoming free, and I was being a real free thinker for the first time in my life, but I still wasn't ready to accept any responsibility for myself, for my behaviour, for my lifestyle. I'm not going to accept it. I'm not going to be responsible. The world is responsible, and I'm just reacting to the world. So I kept going. So I took this van.
What kind of van was it at this point?
A little Holden combo van.
Okay.
And it was cheap to run, a little 4-cylinder van. You could just sleep in it side to side. And I was so lonely. I missed my dog, and I missed all of it. I just needed something in my life. So one day I went to go and buy alcohol, and everything in the bottle shop was, all the beer that I wanted was all hot. It just arrived on the truck. It wasn't even cold. So I was angry again. So I crossed the road to the pub, and I thought I'll go and see if I can get the same beer that I want, the same price. So they didn't. All their beer was too expensive. I only had just enough money for the beer that was hot. So I thought, something inside of me just said, I was really studying dog training at the time. I was really into reading books about dog training, and I was thinking about dogs a lot. And so I was in the pub, I was just looking at the TVs in that, and I thought, there's greyhound races. I like greyhounds. And I thought, anyway, I'll go to the toilet and get out of the pub. And just as I was leaving, something inside of me stopped me. And I never gambled, ever. I got $5. I put in the machine, pressed it a couple of times, won $650 straight away.
Whoa. That is insane.
Straight away. So I took it all out, and I thought, hang on, what's going on? Something's happening. I could feel something happening in me. So I thought, I'm going to look in the paper for a dog, because that's what I want. First thing I look in there, Whippets, $650. Straight away went and bought it.
Sorry, what's a whippet?
Like a mini greyhound.
Right.
So I took all the training, that I'd done, that I'd learnt about, and I thought, I'm going to do this training. I'm going to train this dog. And little did I know, that's not how dog training works. Dogs are here to teach us lessons about ourselves. If you think you can get a dog and you can make it do what you want and not change your mind about anything, you're wrong. Unless you listen to the dog and learn the lessons that the dog is teaching you, you're not going to be successful in dog training. But I didn't know that yet. So I continued. And I thought, I'm never going to put this dog behind a fence. Ever. I'm going to give him as much freedom and show him the world. So I had a brand new passion. And that passion was to give that dog a life that no other dog's ever had. And I did. So as a puppy, I took him out on the street. I played the guitar. And money just started coming from everywhere because people wanted to see the puppy. I get the stories, the timeline a little bit jumbled up, but I actually got the Whippet before I got the van.
Okay.
Before my dad bought me the van, I actually spent the first year and a half walking with the dog. And we went all through Victoria, and I was going to give him that lifestyle that I knew that I could do. And that would be that every day we would just walk and walk and walk. He had so much energy that he didn't care. He loved it. He didn't care where we were going, what we were doing. We'd just get up in the morning out of the tent and we'd walk. And we'd walk till he's tired and he was have a sleep, and then we'd sit under the tree and sleep it off until he wakes up, and both of us, and we walk again. And we did that for about a year to a year and a half until he started getting older, and I started to realise that, he's not a puppy anymore, and, that we could do other things. And that's when I was offered the van. So we got in the van, the two of us, and I thought, all of my life and all of the fishing and all of the, everywhere, all of the trips, they all involve fishing. They were all fishing orientated. Every place I wanted to go to was because I wanted to fish there. But this time, I wanted to catch the fish that I always tried. I never had the time or the knowledge or the fishing gear or to actually catch the fish that I really wanted to catch. And my favourite fish of all time was the kingfish. And you've got to have the pound for pound rated the third toughest fish on the planet to catch. They're super powerful and they live amongst the reefs and the rocks, and you hook one, they run their head straight into the rocks. They don't go swim out to sea, they come straight back at you and they dive at your feet and they'll break you off on anything. So I went to Marimbula, me and the dog.
How did you get to Marimbula?
We had the van.
So you had the van at this point.
Yeah, I slept in the van for 7 years.
Wow.
So it wasn't until the tail end, and where I travelled to in the van was basically just, I got up about as far as around Byron Bay, about as far as I would go in the van, and then I'd come back down again. It just depended on just years and years went by. We're looking at 22 years. So if it was winter, I'd go up to around Byron Bay area. And in the summer, it's too hot up there. I was sleeping in a van and things. So I'd move back down towards the south coast of New South Wales. But towards the end of all the things with the dog, and by this stage, the dog was about 9 years old. So we'd done a couple of years. Yeah, he's about 9. And we'd done a couple of years walking and travelling, and then, then was basically 7 years in the van, and the dog loved the van. We were able to go to lots of different dog beaches and play with the other dogs, and that was all. I was able to have company with other dog walkers and talk to other dog walkers, and I'd met some horrible people in my travels. People that, I was just sitting in my van doing nothing, and one fella came up, basically tried to kidnap me. He's an ice addict. He's a violent ice addict, and he tried to get in my car and force me to an ATM. But little did he realise I got no money. He's that stupid that he's trying to rob somebody who doesn't even have any money. There's nothing in my... So I got out of the car, and I was scared for my life. And I said to him, the best I can do is I got $200. I lied. I said I got $200 in my bank. If we cross the road into that pub, I'll get it for you. My plan was just to go straight into the bar and yell at the top of my voice, this guy is. This guy's trying to kidnap me. So I did. He was arrested. The detectives and people, I could go through so many stories, but that's just one that stuck in my mind. And not long ago, I got a phone call from the police saying that I might have to go to court. This is only a few months ago from today, saying that I might have to go to court because the same guy is being charged with raping people with cerebral palsy.
Whoa.
This is how evil this man is. You're not going to find a more evil man on this planet. Going back to the fishing, is the last few years of having the van, I really concentrated on fishing. And I had game fishing rods that I would use off the rocks. And one day I got to my favourite game fishing place. It's called Chura Head outside of Marimbula, and I thought, I'm going to do it here. I'm going to catch this fish. I'm going to stop drinking. And I wasn't drinking much then, only a little bit, and it wasn't a big problem. I got to the end of the whole drinking stage of my life, and all of a sudden catching that fish became more important than having a drink or doing anything. And I was prepared to make personal sacrifices to catch this fish. And this was the first time in my life where I was ready to take responsibility for myself. And so I got up at 3 o'clock every single day, no matter what the weather, out of bed at 3 a.m, go down, catch live bait, live fish about this big, and put them in a swimming pool, a kid's swimming pool, fill them all up and have aerators in there and get all my baits, and I'd use a great big rod with a really heavy line, and strong, everything was 100% to catch these fish. And you get a balloon and a heavy mono line and put the live just under the skin of the live fish on his back, put him out under a balloon and drift him out to sea. So I did this for almost 3 months without any result at all. Nothing happened. Getting up non-stop for 3 months, doing this, catching these fish. I mean, do all the walk just to, every morning I walk down to these rocks, go through the procedure of catching the fish, putting the baits out, nothing.
How did you afford to live at this time for 3 months? What income
I was still
stream did
busking.
you
Through
Okay.
all of the years, I always played guitar on the street. And I didn't even know what I was singing, or wouldn't care what I was singing. I just, whatever Australian popular songs of, didn't have no impact on me of what I was singing or playing. Just so, and I've always played guitar. I'm no expert, but I'm reasonable. Like, I can play and I can sing. Over all of those years of practice, you actually develop something.
Yeah.
So
How much would you, when you're busking for a day, how long would you busk, and how much would you make from a busking session?
About 2 hours, an hour and a half to 2 hours a day, and I'd average about $50
All right.
every day, and I was still taking government money. I had lots of money.
Yeah. Okay.
I got really good at the, by this stage, I'm at the end of about the 22 years. I'm trailing the end of it. I became really good at it. I had lots of confidence, and so everything was starting to line up in my life again. Properly for the first time line up. And this fishing, I was not going to let it go. I was putting these baits out, and the fishermen come along and they go, "You were here yesterday." I go, "I know. I'm here every day." And I say to the other fishermen, "Oh, don't even bother today. The weather's terrible. The waves are too big. You've got a headwind." And they go, "But I only got 2 days. I came here. I've driven here all the way from Melbourne. I got 2 days to fish. I got to fish." I go, "What a stupid man! Like, I got 3 months here. If I don't want to fish today, if the weather's bad." So I started to feel happy, and eventually I put all these. If you're persistent, it will pay off. And so I started catching fish over 40 pounds, over 20 kilos. I started catching big fish, and I started getting happy, and I started to appreciate the sun rising. Just simple things. Appreciated the wind going the right way. All of these things that I'd hated started to come back and be real. And I started to say to people, "When was the last time you saw the sun come up in the morning?" Oh, and they go, "I don't know. A long time ago." I go, "I see it every day. It's fantastic. I go down there, it's cold on the rocks and everything, and the sun comes. All of a sudden I'm warm, and I'm taking my clothes off, and I'm feeling good." And I started to, just those 4 elements of the earth, the air, the fire at night, and the earth, the air, the fire, and the water. And I mean, I had all 4 elements going right there. Every day I had mixing myself in these 4 elements. And as I've learned, when you do this, the spirit comes up inside of you. I learned that getting close to those 4 elements that I'd hated. All of my life I'd hated those 4 elements. I hate the wind. I hate the sun, it's too hot. I hate sleeping on the ground. Everything that I hated were the things that I had to learn to like and accept in order for the spirit to rise in me.
Yeah.
So I got happy, and I stopped drinking, and I then moved. All of this COVID stuff started, and but it was even before that. Something inside of me was saying, move into, you've got an opportunity to get a government house for the first time. And the dog, he's older now, like, grey face and grey whiskers, and he'd lived in a van all of this time. And I thought it's about time he had a house and a nice heater and a comfortable couch to sleep on, and So I wanted to give it to the dog. So I thought, okay, I'll get a government house for the first time. And they moved me into a place with criminals, horrible criminals that were stabbing each other in the driveway and beating each other's knees in with hammers. I was thinking, what on earth is this? I thought all these years people who lived in a house were happy. Look at these people, these are monsters. You think there's monsters out on the road? Look at these ones. So I just had an existential crisis. I had a huge breakdown. And I started going crazy. And I also started, I didn't drink, but I started smoking marijuana again. And it was making me feel happy, smoking it. But it was making me face myself. It was making me, my thoughts were all directed at myself and my life. And who am I? Why am I here? What is this all about? What's this world that I live in that I don't understand? So I just had a breakdown. So through this breakdown, I decided to study. I want to know what this is. I want to know what this world is. So I was set on a new path of studying. And one day I was walking my dog backing through these horrible people where I lived. And they've always got their stupid dogs off leash. And all the, one day I walked back and a man who didn't even live there with off leash pit bull cross. The dog just charges my dog, bites his leg off. This dog that I've loved my whole life, it's got no leg. What the hell is... And I'm having a spiritual breakdown. And it happens right in it. So I go crazy. I'm put in a mental hospital. There's nothing wrong with me. There's something wrong with the world. So now I'm locked in a mental hospital. They're trying to drug me. And I said, I don't want your drugs. There's nothing wrong with me. Oh no, we need to drug you. We'll hold you down and force these drugs into you. So I had to stop. I had to stop being angry. I had to start calming down. I was thinking, I'm not gonna get out of here unless I calm down. Because I wanted to kill everybody in there. And I started talking to the patients in there. And I started to realise, hang on, they're like me. All of these people in here, they're like me. I started to show them love, care. And I calmed down and I got out. And when I was in the mental hospital, a crazy patient tried to bash a woman in there, one of the staff members, and I hated the staff members in there. Instead of, everything inside me said, let that woman bash that staff member. And I thought, no, I can't. I don't condone violence. So I just went and stopped it. And it was through stopping it that the staff member had new thoughts. She thought, I'm going to let this guy out. And did. So I lost my dog. But that's alright. I started to deal with everything. For the first time I'm going to deal with it. I'm going to, by way of knowledge, I'm going to understand this world. So, I'd never had a phone, I never had, something led me to studying the occult. I've always been told never study the occult. You don't want to study the occult. You don't want to know the truth about this world because it's so bad that you will regret it if you study the occult sciences of this world. And I thought, I don't care, I'm going to do it anyway. Something inside of me just gave me this huge will to study everything, study Hermeticism, right down to studying Satanism, studying everything that I could possibly get my hands on. And I built up inside of me enough knowledge to face people and say what is true and what is not true, what objective morality is and what moral relativism is. And there is a big difference. And what objective truth is compared to your truth or his truth or somebody else's truth. They don't exist. There is one truth. You see it or you don't see it. And so I got a lot of power inside of me. My spirit became whole. And I was able to start saying what I really meant. So I started saying it to the government, to these people in government offices. And they wouldn't listen to a word. They put out AVOs against me. They lied to the police about me. I never threatened anybody. I never said anything about violence. All I did was point a big mirror at them and say, you're the problem. I'm judging you. You are the problem. I don't like that. So one lady, she came to my house from the housing department with this horrible house that I lived in with these horrible neighbours, and I was in the middle of this huge, dark night of the soul that lasted 2 years. And I just turned to her and 4 policemen with her, and I went off at them. I called them every single name I could possibly think of, and the police are the cult of ultimate evil. They don't take responsibility for themselves. They don't take responsibility for their behaviour. They bash people. They cause all the violence in this world, and I've directed everything at these policemen, and they stepped back. They don't even know why they stepped back. But I slammed the door in their faces. And then once the lady from the government had left and gone back to her office, the police come knocking on the door again. How dare you talk to us like that? We'll put you in the grave. We'll kill you. We'll put guns at you. They threatened me with everything. I said, I don't give a do it. Do it, you pigs. They walk away. They got no power. I had the power. So the lady in the government office, she heard about this, and she decided, I'm going to move this guy. This guy doesn't belong there. This guy is he's not one of these criminals that are in there stabbing each other and bashing each other. And so she moved me into my own house with no beautiful neighbour and a great area.
Was this the same lady?
Same place I live right now.
Was this the same lady that you had yelled at before, or a different lady?
So the lady that I helped was in the mental hospital.
Right.
But
No, the lady that came to your door.
Oh yeah, same lady.
The same lady.
Yeah, she saw me do all of that to the police, and she had something go off inside of her that she realised, this guy's speaking truth that nobody else is speaking. He might be saying it all jumbled up, and he's not very good at conveying what he's saying, but he's saying it in righteous anger. But she saw the difference between an angry person and somebody who had righteousness in their heart and was using it. So I was moved into the house where I am now, but now then moved me into this new house and all the COVID things started. So I kept studying, and I didn't follow their orders. They said, wear a mask. I said, no. They said, go and get vaccinated. And I said, no, I'm not. I'm going to do what I want to do. You're not telling me what to do anymore. Stop telling me what to do. I'm not going to follow your orders no matter how much you try and make me. I'm not going to do it. Oh, well, we'll threaten you then. Threaten me. Nail me to a crucifix. Do whatever you want. I'm not following anything you say. Go away. They did. But now they want me to sign job agreements. There used to be a job agreement, but now it's a job plan. I have to look for all of these jobs, and I have to follow all their orders. So I said, I'm not signing it. Go to hell, I'm not signing it. They said, well, you're going to lose your beautiful house. And You're going to lose everything you own, and that's good. I don't care. I've been on the street for 22 years. You think you can scare me? I'm not scared of you. Call them Nazis. They're order-following Nazis is what they are. I don't follow orders. I follow my heart. I don't follow your orders anymore. And that's where we are today. I don't get any government money. I ride a bicycle around and collect cans out of a bin. Out of all the bins in the park, I put my head in the bin and I take the cans out. I'm back to living on baked beans. I don't care. I'm happy. Because I know who I am, and that's why we come to this planet. We don't come here to serve money, to work and be successful and do it. We come here to connect to our souls and to find our true self and to be on that road of enlightenment. And I'm doing it. And no one's going to stop me. No one and nothing is going to stop me anymore. No one's going to direct me, do any of these things. I'm not a human. A hue is a shade of. And a human is not a man. It's a shade of a man. And I've been a human all my life. I've been a shade of a man, not a real man. Today I can stand here and say, I am a man, not a human. And I will die a man. I will never be a human again.
What would be a piece of advice you would give for people who are travelling around Australia? Or people who are travelling anywhere in the world? What's one piece of advice you would want to give to them? Just briefly.
Is do no harm. Don't harm other people. Don't harm the planet. Don't harm the animals. You know, I don't fish anymore. I don't want to cause any harm to the fish. I love the fish. I don't want to eat them. I don't want to kill them. I don't want to put a knife in their head or a hook in their back. I want to see them. You know, and love is the law. That's God's law. To love. Not to hate, not to... and if you're travelling, see the world with real eyes. Don't just see what you want to see. See what's there. See the darkness that's there. And turn it into light. Turn it into... If you see something negative, try and turn it into something positive. Otherwise you'll suffer. Spend time with people. Pay attention to people. We spend money, but we can pay with money, but we can spend with time and we can pay with attention. And don't be scared. Fear is not real. We have this fear inside of us that something is going to be a consequence for everything. Take the consequences and you'll learn to deal with fear. The more things that you can suffer, the more people that try and put fear in your heart, let them do it and show them that you're not scared. Because it's an illusion. Most of them won't carry out any of the things they threaten. And if they do carry them out, it's on them. Do no harm to this planet. Everything on this planet is created in this name that we call Christ. You want to destroy these things? I don't. I'm sick of it. So, maybe I will suffer for the rest of my life by learning the occult sciences. People say, don't learn them because you'll suffer. You'll have to see the misery of this world if you study these sciences. I say, I don't care. I want to see this. I want to see how miserable. I want to see the darkness. I want to see the evil. I want to know who my enemy is. I encourage everybody to wake up spiritually. And the only way you can do that is by way of knowledge. Ignorance is not bliss. Ignorance causes suffering, and I don't even call it ignorance, I call it ignorance. You ignore everything. Stop ignoring, and specifically stop ignoring yourself. Pay attention to yourself. So, I wish all the travellers in the world the best, and I hope, they find what they're looking for outside and inside, because if you're not looking inside, you won't look outside, and if you're not looking outside, you won't look inside. So do a walkabout. The Aboriginals go on walkabout. This is what travelling is. It's no different. When you go on walkabout, you're searching for your soul. And find it. It's there. Anyone can find it. But you've got to have some knowledge, and you've got to be prepared to, take a hit. You've got to bleed for the dancer. World is the dancer, and if you're not prepared to shed some blood, go back to your little mine cage. Go back to your little prison. Go back to your little safety of your house. What are you doing on the road? You don't deserve to be on the road. If you're not prepared to exactly that, you've got to bleed for the dancer. That's my final word. Thank you to everybody who sees this video, and I wish all the travellers the best. Sorry I couldn't have just told you all the light and happiness of travelling, but I'll be lying, and I don't lie about travelling, and neither should you or anybody else. But I might be travelling again very soon, and when I do, it will be with love. That's all. You want to take a whole lot of things with you. You want to take all these new fancy, phones and cameras, and I'm glad this is here, because we can use this as a tool to teach and to show the world. But in all honesty, with some experience, all you really need to take with you is love in your heart, and more importantly than love, and there is something more important, is care. You have to care enough. You have to care and generate care in this world. Care is something we can generate, and the more care we generate, the more love that will grow. As John Lennon said, love is a flower. You've got to let it grow. You've got to water it. Love is the answer. And you just don't know nobody knows the questions. All right? How can you say love is the answer if you don't have the question? They say, oh, it's the answer. Okay, well, what's the question? I don't know. Go and find the question. People are not looking on the road for answers. They're looking for questions. And you're going to answer those questions truthfully. And the first start to spiritual enlightenment, stop lying to yourself. Stop telling yourself lies. We all do it. Every single one of us we tell lies. They can tell you all the lies in the world, but the ones that count are the lies that you tell yourself. When you stop lying to yourself, the soul comes forward. So, thank you.
That's a really good point to end on. Thank you very much, Nick. I appreciate it. And this podcast will be on every medium: Apple, Spotify, YouTube, etc. If you like this, give a follow, like, subscribe, leave a comment, whatever. Thank you very much, and see you in the next one. Sweet.
Thank you.
Thank you very much, Nick. I appreciate it.
No worries.